Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
There's a certain primordial quality to beaches and shorelines. When I walk on the beach, I often feel as if I'm in another place or time. There is a strong sense of otherness that does not occur elsewhere in nature. It is alien, and yet I feel as if I belong there somehow. In spite of its vast emptiness, I never feel alone when I'm walking along the sand, as if I walked that same path countless times in a series of millions of past lives. And the sound of the waves grasping at the shore is like a lullaby I must have heard before I had any conscious reckoning of what I was. There is something raw about these locations, a message that finds its way to your soul and makes it its home. I often hear voices carried over the wind, but I wonder sometimes if they were produced by any earthly human. Once I found a seemingly mundane concrete block peculiarly washed up on the shore. It looked much too heavy to float, and it made me uneasy to look upon it. I tried to approach it, but the closer I got to it, the more anxious I felt, as if there was somehow very dangerous. Out of curiosity, I tried to touch it, but I was unable to walk within a certain radius of it, as I became paralyzed with fear for the silly thing. I lost all of my reasoning abilities and ran away in a blind panic. I wasn't able to calm down until I was very far from it, and then only after a long and concerted effort. I don't know how a piece of debris can have that kind of effect on someone, since there was no outward indication of anything unusual about it. But when I went to see it the day after it was gone, I didn't really want to get close to it again anyway. When the wind blows, the stiff fronds of the beach grass traces circles in the sand. I'm overcome by the sensation that everything here is alive, and the elements are engaged in a number of complex dialogues with each other that I'm not privy to.
It's because beaches are places of transition between worlds. At the most simple level, it's the transition between the ocean and land, but they represent death and life respectively. They are themselves transitory and ever-shifting, and are an embodiment of the concept of entropy as they slowly wear away the shore. Like all such places of transition, doors, gateways, bridges, crossroads, graveyards, the gap between the worlds is thinner, and hence are more likely to attract paranormal phenomena.
I live near the ocean, and there are many, many lakes around, nicknamed the City of Lakes. Never anything paranormal, though a few summers ago I went out to my parents' place for the day. They live out in the sticks, on a lake in the woods. We went boating and snorkeling in a little cove. I found this rock, underwater, that was just unnerving. Can't really explain how, but none of us wanted to stay near it or investigate. And my dad did diving as part of his job for years. I don't know how to explain it really. For as far down as you could see, it was almost pyramid-shaped, but flatter on the top rather than pointed. Obelisk-shaped, I suppose? I don't know. Not really paranormal, but we thought it was weird. I'm gonna try to find it again this summer.
I have one you guys might like. There's this middle-aged guy that's kind of famous around here. He used to be a pretty popular local celebrity surfer, and damn near every day if you went down to the beach, he'd be out on the water. Surfing was pretty much the guy's life. At some point, he just stopped surfing completely, out of nowhere too. I hear that at the time there was even some possibility of him going pro, but the guy stopped surfing entirely after he had been rushed to the hospital one morning. Now the rest of this is just what I've heard, and it's starting to turn into an urban legend already for something that happened in the past decade. But the people I've heard swear up and down this is the story that someone managed to weasel out of the guy one night. Anyway, the guy gets rushed to the ER because his fingers are gone. Like all of them, totally gone. They look like that had been bitten off, and he's in no condition to talk when they rush him in. He's a surfer, so the initial assumption by the doctors is that he had a shark attack. It's kind of unlikely though, because when it happened, it wasn't really the season for sharks to be roaming in the waters nearby, and there hadn't been a report of a shark in the regional waters for a good long time. They take care of his wounds, but the guy's in bad shape. He had signs of sleep deprivation, some alcohol poisoning. His teeth were messed up and every single one of his fingers were gone, down to the last digit. So they decide to run an X-ray on him to see if there's anything else wrong with him, and he's still not in a good enough condition to talk and tell them what the hell happened to him. And this is where it gets weird. Outside of the previously mentioned stuff, there's really nothing wrong with him. They do find something in his stomach though. Bones. The guy apparently ate every single one of his own fingers off. This guy was popular around town, like I said. People knew him and he had plenty of friends. He wasn't some nut who would just up and decide, I think I'll eat all my fingers today. Naturally, they run some tests on him to see if he was on meth or some other drug that would make him lose his mind and do that. Because it's not unheard of for some druggies to do crazy shit like that. Not a drug in his system, outside of the alcohol. And even that wasn't bad enough to justify him doing that to himself. He wasn't totally blackout drunk, but it just seemed like the guy had been drinking that rather than eating or drinking water. Eventually he wakes up after a day, and the doctors get him to talk. He gives some kind of excuse and makes up weird stories, so they just send him in to get his head checked for however long and make sure he's not a suicide risk. After a while he was released, and since then pretty much went around doing odd jobs, but stopped surfing or even hanging out at the beach. So this is where it goes from bizarre to spooky. A guy is hanging out with him and after a good bit of alcohol gets him to spill what really happened. The surfer guy is pretty buzzed and starts talking about what happened. He says it wasn't a shark attack. He wasn't even in the water when it happened. It was after he had been out surfing for most of the morning and came back on the beach to chill out for a bit before going out to grab some lunch. He grabs his board and starts to make for the car, but out of nowhere feels this weight on his back. It wasn't a physical weight, but more like that feeling you get when someone's watching you. But the surfer said it hit him like a real weight, like eyes weren't just watching him but just boring into him. He looks over his shoulder and there's a guy standing right behind him, maybe 2 feet away. This guy is dressed like a sailor head to toe, the stereotypical kind. White pants, white shirt with that weird mini cape on top of it. I forget what those are called. A white beret type hat with the tassel. From what the surfer described him outside of that, he was tall and lanky and had long black hair. Really weird thing the guy stressed was this sailor's hands. Apparently he had beautiful hands, like something you'd see in a painting or classical sculpture. This sailor guy just starts talking about beaches being places of transition and how he doesn't like them. Kind of reminds me of what the previous poster was saying about the beaches. Sailor guy is going on and on about beaches being transitional areas, like they aren't quite belonging to the sea or belonging to the land. The beach was some kind of border that he hated to pass through. The sailor keeps going on about beaches being borders, and then says that surfers are the same thing. According to him, surfers are transient and don't belong. Around this time, the surfer got this really bad feeling that he just knew this sailor was a murderer or some kind of psycho. Personally, I don't know why he didn't just get out of there as soon as some guy snuck up on him. The sailor keeps ranting about surfers and beaches and demands to know what the surfer considers himself. Is he a man of the land or a man of the sea? He gives examples like the dentist doesn't leave land, so he's a man of the land, while a fisherman lives off the sea. So naturally, he's a man of the sea. So what is a surfer? They go out to water but return to land quickly enough. They don't stay out on the open ocean for weeks or months. Naturally, the surfer has no idea what he's talking about, and the sailor is getting agitated about it. He starts insulting him, saying indecision is a sign that you're not a man. He keeps demanding, are you a man of the sea or a man of the land? He keeps going into him about this, calling him indecisive and not a man. At some point, the sailor just grabs the guy's hands and tells him, if you want to prove you're a man, eat these, pointing to his fingers. The surfer gets out of there finally, but said that those words stuck in his head for nights, and yeah, I guess he just gave into the sailor's voice and ate his fingers. No one else has seen a sailor-looking guy around town, so I have no idea what's that about. Was he just some kind of psycho? A weird sea ghost? What the hell, /X/? Be me on spring break in Panama City with friends. Half drunk, staggering up the beach at like 1 a.m. Spot 2 of those big water tricycles getting washed out to sea. Rescue. Aye, we saved these things. They owe us a ride. Out on the ocean on big trikes, goofing off and laughing while we pedal toward our hotel. Don't notice the current taking us out. Next thing we know, we can't even see the beach, just the glow from the lights. Start pedaling like crazy toward the lights. Cloudy, so no moon, dark as shit, start losing sight of each other. Shout to another trike, pedal toward us, anons. Can finally see them clearly again, coming toward us. All of a sudden, they both start screaming and their trike just laterals about 20 feet in an instant. They're all WTF. WTF was that? Water glowing softly from stirred-up plankton. Hear a ton of splashes all around us. I realize it's a school of fish jumping. Something hammers our trike, spinning us around, everybody freaking out. Hear what sounds like a truck's air brake being released. Something rises up from under us, trike literally rolling down the slope of its back. The trike tips over. Me and my friend are fighting with each other to get it turned back upright. Finally coordinate and get it done. Pull ourselves back up on the trike. The whale is gone now. Keep pedaling till we finally get back to shore, trembling like little babies.
In Death Valley National Park, Devil's Hole is a tiny spot of water in an otherwise desolate and inhospitable environment. It is home to the only population of the Devil's Hole pupfish, which lives in the top few feet of this pool of water. They are rarely found more than 2 or 3 feet from the surface, but the maximum depth is over 300 feet. One night in 1965, several kids jumped the fence and got in. 2 never came back out, although divers attempted to rescue them in the event they were stuck in an air pocket called Brown's Room. They weren't. Nobody knows precisely how deep Devil's Hole is. Tethered weights go to at least 485 feet, with more to go. David Rose and Paul Giantontieri entered with friends but never came back out. Jim Houts reconnoitered to a depth of 315 feet, then a record, but found no bodies, only a dive chart and a fading flashlight. Houts discusses the recovery attempt. I also led a rescue there in 1965. 3 went in the water and 1 got some sense and said, "I'm not doing it." They did this at night. Once you round that first bend at 90 feet, you don't know what dark is until you go around that bend. There's no reflection down there. The walls are limestone. They look smooth like clouds, but they're rough. Rub your hands against it, and it'll take the skin right off. A call came in from the federal government. They said, "Are there any air pockets in those caves down there?" And I said, "Yeah." I get up to Los Alamitos with my guys, and this seaplane, a Grumman Albatross, was on the runway, engines running. Next thing you know, we're flying and the hatch isn't even closed, so we get there from Nellis Air Force Base at daybreak. The media was out in full force, the military, state police, even a big trailer that served food. We had 4 guys. I set up my first team of 2 guys and we went in increments with divers at 2 junctions to handle decompression issues. I got down into the lower chamber, and there I found a mask with a snorkel on it and a fin. Later I found another item from the other diver. But the point is, when you get that deep, you get nitrogen narcosis, nitrogen poisoning. It's a drunken state and you get lightheaded. Once you get that, it's far more probable that you're going to do something stupid because you feel there's nothing you can't do. The only reason I was able to make these dives was because I'd been training for it, for the narcosis. I went to the surface and notified everybody about what we found. It was a very sad, very solemn moment. I said, "I'm going to recover the rest of this equipment and I'll do one more thing to confirm." So I made one dive to the last little ledge at 325 feet. At that point, the Devil's Hole opens up wide, and I can tell you one thing. I know it goes down to over 900 feet. We once let out 932 feet of cable from that point, and there's a current down there. So how much of the cable was bowed from the current, I don't know, but it's just massive. But down at 325 feet, that's where I found the remainder of some of the gear. Right there. Just as big as life. I'm sure that's where the kid wound up, in the very far depths. He just kept going down. The guys were never found. The only thing down there now is bones.
When I was too young to understand that I would not swim without my arm floaties, I jumped into a pool and drowned. I was alone playing ball with the dog in the backyard. ball went into the pool. Knowing no better, I followed. I wasn't afraid. I didn't know that I was drowning. I sank to the bottom, looking up. I could see the dog at the end of a tunnel that used to be the pool. The tunnel got dark and I fell asleep. It was comforting. Later, I wake up on the side of pool puking water. Somebody heard the dog barking and checked outside. They saw me at bottom of pool and saved me. I can't remember anything of my life before this. I don't care for water these days.
Be about 11. I loved swimming. Swimming at a beach with shark nets. They've got these beacons up on the shore that tell you where it's safe to swim, and you have to stay in between them. I've often seen the lifeguards come down from their tower and make a loud beep on their loudspeaker and usher people back into the safe zone if they swim out too far left or right. And parents always tell me to stay in the safe zone. Decide today, I'm going to swim straight out until I find the shark nets, but tell myself I'll stay between them and the shore when I find them. Swim far out beyond the kids and then the adults, and then beyond the more adventurous adults, and still haven't found the shark nets. Expect to see some half-submerged boys somewhere along the line. Suddenly I see them pass under me, but the water is getting choppy and I'm pulled straight over them. Totally alone now, a good half-mile or so from shore. Glance back to shore. I'm way out beyond the one beacon by a good quarter of a mile. There was no bloop from the lifeguards and I could see the area of the beach where everyone was. Between the beacons it was quiet. No one was hailing me. Nothing. Strange feeling. Start getting picked up by Undertows and getting pulled further and further along parallel to the beach. Start getting submerged over and over. Swimming against the currents is useless. Get it into my head a few times when pushed under that I won't make it back up this time. Also have sharks on my mind. Suddenly I start feeling shells, rocks under my knees and feet when I'm pushed under. Notice I'm close to shore. Finally I can get my feet under me and come up on shore. I'm way up the coastline. It's not even a beach anymore, but a stone shoreline. Make my way down the shoreline until I get back to the beach. My parents were still sleeping on their towels. The lifeguards hadn't even noticed, and I was actually in real trouble out there. Never said anything about it to anyone, but it was kind of foundational in a way.
Ha 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 shit. I have a similar story which happened about 4 months ago. I suck at Greentext but fly down to the country to visit my girlfriend who I haven't seen for a while. Chill and shit. Oh, anon we should go kayaking at the river. Never been kayaking in my life or have much experience in the water, shitty childhood or whatever. Her stepdad hires some kayaks the next day and we make our way out. It's like a little secluded swimming hole that only her family really goes to, but runs down and around the whole area. Nothing but trees and dirt roads surrounding the river. Have to drag the damn things about a mile before we actually get to the water. Listen to music and drink and shit there for a little until we decide we want to start. Put our stuff in the little compartment thing where you put stuff. Cruise downstream about a half mile. Okay, watch out, there's a rapid coming up. Okay? I have no idea what a rapid is. See big swells in the water with a strong-ass current pulling me straight towards the willow trees hanging over the bank? Wait, WTF. Get pulled straight into the tree and hit my head on an overhanging branch. Flip.png. Notice that I strap myself into my kayak subconsciously. Struggle to flip myself while getting pulled by this strong-ass current. Submerged underwater for time frames of 5 to 10 seconds for about 2 minutes. Finally get my shit together and think more calmly. Am I calm or am I just becoming unconscious? Get lightheaded as I pop up and take a big breath, go down and unstrap myself. Fiddle around with the belt until I get it loose, and literally just as I get to the surface my skin feels like it's about to burst. Pull myself out onto the upside-down kayak and lay there, and I think black out for a while. Water starts calming, and as I come back to, my girlfriend's crying and trying to come back, but the current is still too strong to paddle against, so we have to wait a bit. Water calms, pull the kayaks onto rocks. Fuck kayaking.
I have a big fascination with the sea and sharks and all, but that shit is exactly why I don't hang around at beaches, or at least don't go out too far. I don't want the sea to claim me.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I was 11. My family and I were on vacation in the Bahamas, or somewhere tropic like that. Anyway, I was swimming in the crystal clear ocean water with a snorkel on, just so much I can only peer into the water. I was by the shore near a festival. It was nighttime. The fish were beautiful. Their scales reflected off the lights on shore. I was tired, so I began swimming back to shore. I decided to get one last look at the fish before I left the water. I made a quick turn to my side. Right there. 2 inches from my face, a pufferfish was gently swimming towards me. I panicked in fear. I began frantically flailing around in the water, distressed and looking for help. I began vocalizing shouts from under the water. My parents were at least 60 yards away from me, enjoying the loud, festive music. Some screams can't be heard. It still haunts me to this day.
First story. Went on a deep wreck dive, 250 feet. Current so strong we had to hang on to anchor line like our lives literally depend on it. On ascend, novice panicked and kicked my mask and regulator clean off my face. I know we barely started the ascend. I am 200 feet below and there is no way I can swim up. Frantically searching for my regulators, I can't reach them due to the current pulling it straight away from my hands. Look up with no mask, seriously thinking about risking it and just shoot up. Thought I was gonna die. My training kicks in, my left hand automatically felt my backup reg, found my mask, ascended up safely. The novice is a dumb bitch. Didn't tell her what she did, just kept quiet. Second story. Ocean kayaking to a small uninhabited island. About a 2-hour paddle. Got super tired, stopped to enjoy the beautiful open ocean all around me. Suddenly I felt the urge to look down and realized I stopped at a part where the coral reaches to just a few feet below the surface. I observed the coral, lots of nooks and crannies, which gave me the chills. Put on my reef shoes and dare myself to get off the kayak to stand on them, not sure if I did or did not. The sight of the corals rising from the deep ocean to just under my kayak creeps me out to this day. Third and final one. 11 years old, went nighttime deep sea fishing with my dad and his buddies. My line caught something heavy, so we decided to pull it in. Close to the boat, we shine a flashlight to it. It's a rock, corals full of fish swimming around it. I pulled up to Nemo's home. The sight of our flashlight lighting up a creepy coral in dark water really imprints in my young mind. I scuba dive. But yet, each time I was terrified. It doesn't matter if I dive in a lake or open water 60 feet or 150 feet, I never feel at ease. I was an avid diver for 7 years and later did free diving, which is safer and less creepy. I swear unless I have to, I will never go diving again, nor will I train my friends or family to do it. Ocean is creepy shit. My instinct tells me to stay away.
I used to be a night guard for a smuggling boat that would take drugs from Hong Kong to Hawaii. People really underestimate how bright it is out on the open sea. No light pollution, so the moon and stars actually grant you a fair bit of visibility. There are some big things living in the ocean. Not just normal stuff like whales, like things that would eat whales. Things that people attributed to just drunken sailors. It's easy to see, and I'm not going to jump to any conclusions about what I've seen. But I definitely know for sure that there are things out there that we don't know about.
What the hell?
I get what this guy's saying. Street lamps, floodlights, etc. Make it so that all you can see is what's directly in them, while everything else is obscured. Having lived in a house basically in a woods, we'd almost never turn on our outside lights because of all the places things you couldn't see with them lit.
Your eyes adjust to the levels of the artificial night, not the actual light levels, so in the grand scheme of things you can't see as much, because anything not being lit artificially is very dark. Doesn't seem like much until you're away from civilization like deep in the woods or the open water. Then you really notice how much it restricts your vision.
Got any particular stories to share?
Only one personally, and it was that our boat just suddenly stopped, like everything jerked forward and everything fell off the shelves. Like I've never seen that amount of deceleration in water. It was from like 20 miles per hour to dead stop, big-ass boat. Then it was like we were being pushed in different directions, kind of like something's was swimming around us, knocking us around like a kid playing with a boat in the bathtub. Other than that were just the stories that the others told me, but my Cantonese was shit, so I could only get the gist of what they were saying. They talked about a giant dragon that swam, but I assume it was more like a serpent. Only reason I believe them is because of how much their demeanor and attitudes changed while telling it. These were not people who were spooked very easily. Some guy went overboard one time and they didn't flinch, but when they were even talking about this, they were just staring at the table, not blinking. I don't know, man, there's just shit out there.
Try open water diving. 45 minutes at a 50 feet depth, just when the sunlight starts to diffuse and waver. It's the literal twilight zone with nothing but the abyss beneath you. I did it when I was 15, and to be true, I've had recurring nightmares of the experience ever since. It is pretty nuts. I went a bit deeper and almost had a panic attack because it got just dark enough that after a few minutes of swimming around, I realized that I truly had no idea which direction was which. When I swam forward, I wasn't sure if I was swimming parallel to the surface toward it or diving deeper. Finally, I realized two things. One, strapped to my wrist was this handy little set of gauges. One that tells me my depth and one that tells my tank pressure. I could always just change directions until my depth changed, then I'd know which way I'm going. And two, buoyancy. If I remained perfectly still, I'd feel a pull toward the surface that's different from the external pull of the tides. This is more of a pull deep inside you. Maybe it was just the oxygen in my lungs or something else. But I could feel which way was up when I relaxed.
Or you could have just fully inflated your BCD and it would do more than just gently tug at you. It would have shot you to the surface.
Yeah, at that depth, getting shot to the surface would result in the bends. Nitrogen from the pressurized tank you've been breathing from would expand in your bloodstream from the sudden change in compression. A rapid ascent would have, and you would die.
Rapid ascent, yes. But the fun thing about BCDs is that they are analog. Any person with the slightest bit of scuba training learns how to give themselves positive, neutral, or negative buoyancy with their BCD. There is no excuse outside of sheer idiocy for a diver to lose the direction toward the surface. At 50 feet, the main problem with the air in your lungs expanding more than the nitrogen in your blood, depending on how long you were down for. All of this is moot, though, as I never said a diver should shoot to the surface, but that they could. The idea of using a depth gauge to determine which way is up is stupid when you can increase your buoyancy a bit.
There's always that Missouri cave diving story they tell us to keep us straight. Local dive shop takes trips to go cave diving. They choose to dive with nitrox, aka enriched air. Gas mixture that allows you essentially dive longer, but keeps you from diving deeper. Team submerges. Time goes by as they are barely through a cave entrance. One of the divers notices their buddy goes belly up to the cavern roof. Goes to investigate. Oxygen levels are fine, no response, no pulse. The dive master says to abort dive safely. Dive ended without any more casualties. Dive master so shaken up by death. Insists he has to retrieve the body right away. Goes alone. As he descends to the cave entrance, he feels his lips start to tingle. Suddenly his eyes roll back and has a convulsion. Spits out the regulator supplying his air and drowns. Turns out the first diver died from oxygen poisoning. He filled his own tank and didn't check the O2 levels in his nitrox blend, giving himself like a 75% mixture. The cave was too deep for that mix. The dive master was killed because he did not wait long enough for the nitrogen levels in his blood to settle and died in a seizure. And that's why you always dive with a buddy and always have a O2 sensor to check your nitrox mix.
Go swimming. See guy drowning. Try and be a hero. Swim over to him to help. Pushes me under in panic to try and get up. Shocked, I begin to flail, but remember I can swim and swim away. Leave the guy to drown and let the lifeguard save him. They do. Spookums.
Okay, be me. Spring break 2015, going to the beach. The one in Florida with the Tito's Shack surf shop or whatever. I had fun. I almost found some huge intact shell until I lost it. Found 2 man-o-wars that were beached. Get told I gotta wrap it up. Everyone around is clearly drunk, straight from college on spring break. Decide screw it and see how far I can make it to the buoy marker, at the point where everything on my body burns. Look at the shore. Everyone is just specks. I only can see hotels. Turn around to the ocean. Surprise dot bump. Smacked by a decent-sized wave. Try to regain vision. Eyes on fire. See something looking like a plastic bag coming on the next wave. Remember the beached ones? Book it for shore. Never look back. Lungs were fucked when I eventually reached the shore. Shaking like a wet dog. End up leaving after that and a fight happens between 2 college girls. To this day, I don't know if anyone could see me out there. Makes me think what would have happened if I got stung bad.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.